Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord, Michael Harris. And I want to say this. I want to preface this by saying I know that we suck, and yada, yada, yada. But I will always take pleasure in beating the New York Mets, even if it's just one game. Like, it's just funny. It's almost even more enjoyable. It's not more enjoyable, I want to say, but they're fighting for a playoff spot. They're fighting for their playoff lives. If this ragtag bunch of underperformers, no Acuna, no Riley, missing our entire rotation,
Carlos Carrasco,
can win a game, even a game against them, it's especially on the road, it's objectively hilarious. So if we can in any way hurt their playoff chances, it away, and we play them 3 times later in the year, it might just make me a little bit happy about this team. But one thing is making me happy is Michael Harris. I mean, totally different player. And when I say totally different player, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's the worst offensive player in baseball. Literally the worst offensive player in baseball for the first half of the season among qualified baseball players. And now he's the best. He's he's second in WAR among NL players behind only Shohei Ohtani, and it's a 0.1 difference. I mean, he's literally been the best player in baseball or right at the top. The 180 is ridiculous. And the fact that it really comes down to him just moving his hands, and we're seeing just ridiculous results. For now, around a little over a month stretch, how much are we buying in to what that did this mechanical adjustment, turning Michael Harris into the player we all thought he was going to be coming into the season?
I don't think that anybody should just scoff at these results because it's been too good for too long to just say it's a nice little 2-week stretch. It's longer than that because it dated back to even before the All-Star break. And if you look at the entire team's kind of K to BB ratio, it has improved under Tim Harris. That is one aspect. Now, still can't hit the damn fastball, and that was something we lived on in 2023 with that historic offense. But if you are looking at silver linings with Tim Harris, I'm not making the case that he should stay by any means, but I'm just saying Michael Harris, you see it right then and there that he is striking out far less. He is taking more walks. He's hitting balls more consistently, harder. He's lifting the ball more. And this is the exact kind of person that we all knew he could be, or at least, I never got off the Michael Harris bandwagon. And it's not even a bandwagon. The guy's a damn good player. And he was awful at the beginning of the season. It wasn't just the fact that he couldn't, make contact with the ball. It was his actual approach at the plate that was just so dreadful. And that has improved. So along with the actual of making contact, hard contact, lifting the ball, he is seeing the ball better. And that's a confidence thing. That's not like, at the beginning of the year, you're like, good Lord, I can't get anything going. I'm just swinging to swing. I think you're seeing, something that is sustainable. I do. I mean, listen, is he going to bat like this for an entire season? No. But is he going to be that 280 average, 750 OPS guy that we saw for the first 2.5 seasons? I think so.
Here's my thing on Michael Harris. Was I a little bit worried? Yes. I don't know how you couldn't be a little bit worried about, but I've kind of come to the solution with Michael Harris that he is what he is. And I think you brought up a good point when you talked about confidence, because when you go through these peaks and valleys, guys that tend to lose a little confidence will kind of look like that. And they have a much more extended valley than maybe someone that never loses their confidence, like a Ronald Acuna Jr. or something like that. And I'm not talking that Michael Harris was ever like, oh, I'm a bad baseball player, but just like seeing the ball getting down 0-2.
It would be hard not to lose some confidence.
There's so he's just a streaky baseball player. And I think we saw the absolute worst version of what those streaks can be. I would be shocked if we ever saw a streak like we did in the first half of 20. I think that was probably the worst stretch of baseball Michael Harris will ever have in his entire career. I can confidently say that. I just think he is what he's basically been his entire career. A little streaky offensively. There are some things that his strikeout can get a little there. He's not willing to take his walks. He's a really aggressive hitter. Sometimes his launch ankle gets a little bit going downwards instead of lifting the ball. And then when it is lifting the ball, you get these kind of results. He's going to be a little bit of a streaky hitter his entire career. But he plays elite defense, and he's going to have these stretches where he can carry your baseball team, which is exactly what he's doing. And when you have Michael Harris hitting it, it's just contagious because that guy in the 6-7 hole, we were waiting for him to do this, and it just makes everything easier. And that's without Austin Riley and Ronald Acuna. You get those guys back, and you're starting to see the depth in the lineup. I just think he's an elite defender that is going to be streaky, and he's going to have these streaks where he looks like the best hitter on the team, and he's going to have streaks, hopefully not for a whole first half, just like a month, where he's average. And at the end of the day, we look up, he's an 800 to hopefully 900 OPS guy, but around there, and with the elite defense, you're an all-star pretty much every single year. Is he ever going to be an MVP candidate like he's playing right now? I'm off that train. I thought there was a brief second where maybe he could.
You're not going to be allowed back on, and none of you are.
Especially, it's just not happening.
Especially those. Now, listen, maybe my MVP, I'm still holding on to it. He's still young. Like, this guy is 24 years old?
Yes.
Let's not forget that being a baseball player, being a professional athlete, period, is a constant evolution of you have to reinvent, maybe not completely reinvent yourself, but you have to learn. Like, there's only a couple of people, Ronald Acuna Jr. is probably one of them, who can really go into an offseason, not have to work on anything, and be just damn fine. Everyone else has to constantly improve themselves, where Michael Harris is just 24 years old. This kid is still wickedly athletic. Like, everybody who was just giving up on him, and I'm not saying you were one of those people, but people who were giving up on him to the point of like, hey, we got to salary dump this guy at the trade deadline, is one of the craziest things I have ever heard in my entire life.
I do specifically remember a tweet saying, what if we were able to, I believe it was Acuna, like attach Acuna to Michael Harris in a salary dump. I was like, that has to be the craziest thing I have ever heard, because there would have been teams lining up to buy low. Now, you wouldn't have probably gotten top prospects like you would have a year ago. It definitely would, but teams would have been lining up to buy low on that contract because it's a palatable contract. And frankly, even if we're going to look up at the end of this season with just this hot stretch, if this was, which this is the worst year of Michael Harris's career, but if this is what he was for his entire rest of his contract, he will still be of surplus value based on that contract because of how good he is defensively and just having a few stretches where he's stinking hot.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, people were trying to give him away. Not maybe a bag of baseballs. I'll take a bag of baseballs if you've got it. If not, don't worry about it. We'll take some extra. So, yeah, we'll take some. Buy some stock in our company, and we'll be just fine. It's absolutely mind-boggling how baseball fans, and it's not just Braves fans, can give up on a guy like Michael Harris. And there's plenty of examples around baseball, but Michael Harris is obviously near and dear to my heart. He's a hometown kid. I love how he plays the game. I think, he's one of my favorite, if not favorite players. Everyone's going to say Acuna, and that's the easy answer. That's a chalk answer. But watching Michael Harris play at his absolute peak, there isn't, in my opinion, somebody who is more fun to watch on an everyday basis than Michael Harris when he's playing like this.
No, I mean, he doesn't lack anything in his game. I mean, he's got an argument. Maybe he's the second best defensive center fielder behind Pete Crow Armstrong. He's got power. I mean, we've seen that over the last month. He can hit for average. I mean, frankly, over the course of his career, he's been damn near a 300 hitter. He's got speed to steal bases. He's got an arm. I mean, he is the definition of a 5-tool player. And I thought you brought up a good point about him just being 24 years old, because there's a lot of guys that are in the Hall of Fame that didn't even start their professional career until this point. And we're talking about a guy who's put up four seasons of quality. I mean, this is going to go down as a quality season. Like, if he hits like this the final 6 weeks, this is going to go down as a quality season where he played elite defense and had a decent offensive year.
And another thing that people are going to try and put a but at the end of this little stretches that he's like, well, but he's the worst player in baseball, but he's doing it at a time where there's no pressure, but he's doing it when the games don't matter. Like, any positive momentum the Braves can get as a team, individually or whatever, going into the offseason should be looked at as a positive. The season's over. I get it. But acting like we have to be sad about this resurgence from Michael Harris is just, you're a sad person. And listen, I get it. I'm pessimistic into myself, but like that's just sad. This can only be seen positive. I don't care what anyone says.
What do you mean he didn't have pressure? I mean, we were talking about benching him going in. That's the ultimate pressure. Right. That's more pressure.
Losing your job.
And guess what? We talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago or whenever it was. Byron Buxton was on the we made a push hard. That means Michael Harris, your job is not guaranteed. So the Braves were thinking it too. This guy knew he was playing for his job. No matter what anyone
on
top
of being from Stockbridge, on top of growing up a Braves fan, like on top of winning a Rookie of the Year award, like
on top of being a guy and one of the players, for better or for worse, that's always on social media and reading everything that you say about. Like all that was in his mind. So to say that there was no pressure,
you're right.
There was all the pressure in the world on this guy to deliver, and he was completely underperforming expectations. And for him to have this resurgence, I mean, I think that's a tremendous display of resilience. So I won't even hear that argument for a second that there was no pressure, because I think there was a ton. We got more Braves talk coming up after the break. Alex, I recently did something on the site. Go check it out at sportstalkatl.com. But there's a whole roster. I mean, half the roster next year, when you think about the injuries to the rotation, the bullpen reconstruction that's needing to be done, and then several spots in terms of position players that need to be figured out. So there's a lot of spot opportunities for these guys that are fringe roster guys, new faces, prospects, guys that are journeymen that are maybe having a resurgence with the Atlanta Braves to earn a roster spot in 2026. I came up with 5 of them, and we'll start with Jurickson Profar. And this is playing for your jobs. Obviously, Jurickson Profar is going to be on the roster next season unless they can somehow miraculously find a trade partner. Now, Profar, offensively, the last 4 weeks, has been damn good. I mean, he is earning that spot as the starting left fielder. But as we said in the last segment, they were making a move for Byron Buxton. If they had gotten Byron Buxton, who would have been on the outside looking in? So in my opinion, these next 6 weeks, he's still got to prove that he's the guy in left field, Otherwise, I don't think Anthopoulos stops his pursuit of outfielders in the offseason.
Yeah, I think Mike Harris and Jurickson Profar, their little resurgence, whatever it might you might characterize it as, is super encouraging. And it's awesome to see as a Braves fan, especially looking forward to 2026. But I think you just, like the Byron Buxton thing, I mean, that tells you what this front office thinks of their outfield construction. And I would even throw Ronald in that mix. Now, I'm not saying Ronald's obviously he's not bad. I'm talking injury concerns or just availability in general. And then obviously the performances of Mike Harris and Jurickson Profar. So specifically Profar, I think, he does have a small fan base on Braves Twitter that's defending him. And obviously, if you're right about him, you're right about him. I'm not going to be mad if he ends up being a good player and earning that contract. Like, it's not a gotcha like you think it is with some of these other guys. Like, good. That's a good thing. But to just completely ignore the fact that this Braves front office is a little bit concerned about the outfield. I mean, you don't make a move for Byron Buxton without having some long-term concerns with your outfield.
Somebody's losing their job.
Yeah.
If somebody in that outfield, and I can tell you, especially with the way Michael Harris is playing, it wouldn't be him. And Ronald Acuna Jr., do we even really have to say much about that unless they want to use him more as a DH? But then again, somebody would be losing their job. Then you get to a couple of pitchers on totally different ends of the spectrum. One being Hurston Waldrop, which it's been a fantastic development. I mean, there really has been several good developments over the last several weeks. And Hurston Waldrop has been at the top of the list because the rotation, as we talked about yesterday, you got Spencer Schwellenbach, you got Chris Sale. You're going to throw Spencer Strider out there, even though he's been struggling. So you got 3 guys, but AJ Smith-Shawver's not coming back. Highly doubt Grant Holmes is back. Ronaldo Lopez probably done. You're looking for 2 guys. And Hurston Waldrop is a guy that they've been hoping could be the next AJ Smith-Shawver, the next Spencer Schwellenbach for a little while. And he really struggled to begin the season. But just like Mike Harris, a little tweaks in the mechanics, and all of a sudden he looks like a totally different pitcher. He has a sub-2 ERA over his first 2 starts. If over the final 6 weeks he makes 4 or 5 good starts, he's a front runner for one of those final rotation spots.
Yeah, I mean, I would guarantee you he was invited last year to spring training, but in terms of like that group of where Ian Anderson and AJ Smith-Shawver was this past Braves spring training, where it was like those 2 guys are clearly battling it out for that last position. I think he's knocking on that door. If he's not already there, he's banging on that door of being that guy. And I still contest that, it would just be nice to have that guy in your back pocket in Gwinnett more so than like maybe relying on him.
I mean, if AJ Smith-Shawver was the team's 6th starter this year, you'd feel a little bit more confident, and that's kind of what you're hoping Hurston Waldrop, because if he pitches like this, he's going to be involved in some way.
And then just make him pitch him. Like if he pitches his way and he gives you no choice, good. That's a good problem to have.
Yep, absolutely. But then on the other side, you have Joey Wentz, who is this journeyman, actually started his career with the Braves system, went to Detroit, struggled, went to Pittsburgh, struggled. You get DFA'd by Pittsburgh, you're probably not a very good pitcher, but he comes to the Braves. He's pitched 28 innings, I believe, 23 or 28 innings. It's the same little thing, the little whoops. It's one of those two.
Can't see it.
I can't think of it off the top of my head, but he has a 2.83 ERA. And that's very, very solid. And the thing about Wentz, right, is he has experience both out of the bullpen. He could be your long reliever, or he can be your starting pitcher. And I think that's very, very valuable. And I think absolutely another guy that's playing himself into potentially a bullpen / starter role that could be very, very valuable for the Braves, as we talked about a ton.
Yeah, and I think this is the exact kind of pet project that the Braves have become famous for, Alex Anthopoulos, and we just haven't seen it in a very, very long time, where we could just take these bums and slot them into our clubhouse. Brings out the best in them, generally speaking, except recently. So it's refreshing to see us take this, no offense to Joey Wentz whatsoever. I think he would even agree that he's a complete bum when he came to Atlanta, and now he's turning into a guy. I'm blanking on the guy that we elected not to pick up that $5 million. Now he's with the Mets. Griffin Canning. He could be that guy for you, where Hurston Waldrop's obviously you'd want him to be better, but you could just stash Hurston Waldrop and Gwinnett and then let him play. And if he pitches well next year, keep letting him pitch. And if he doesn't,
wipe your hands clean of it. Yeah, I totally agree. Back to the starting roles, because another guy that I believe will be on the roster, most likely, I definitely think they'll pick up his option. Maybe they find a trade partner with him. But Ozzie Albies, I mean, there's no way right now, as we're sitting here today, Ozzie Albies should be guaranteed to be the starting second baseman of this team. Now, maybe they can't find a replacement that they feel confident in, but they're at least going to evaluate their options and figure out something, and most likely bring in some competition, or maybe they view Nacho Alvarez can be that competition. But he is not going to if he does not turn it around over the next 6 weeks, there is no way in hell the Atlanta Braves can just sit here and be like, Ozzie Albies is our starting second baseman next year, even if they pick up that option.
Yeah, he's another guy that, like, people are really, really, he's a fan favorite. Everybody wants him to work out. Ozzie Albies has no haters in Braves country. He's for comparatively, like, how Braves country views him to his actual production, the ratio is absolutely insane. Whereas other guys like Sean Murphy, production's there, still has got a ton of haters for whatever reason. But I agree. Ozzie Albies is, I would bet a large chunk of change that he'll be the starting second baseman for the Braves in 2026, though.
Yeah, I mean, I like, listen, if I were to give you the odds, I would definitely put it at minus money. Like, I would.
The Braves are just reading who the Braves are. I mean, this is who they are. And let's not act like this roster is, bringing back guys who or it's a roster that needs an injection of cash. So we know we don't have unlimited cash. You need to use that cash in areas that, we need a closer no matter what. We need a starting pitcher no matter what. And that's just like the surface, where it's like no matter what, those two positions have to be filled, and they're expensive. At the end of the day, you might look up and go, Ozzie Albies might just be our best option in terms of where the Braves are looking.
But even if it's just like they don't want to go out there and spend on a second baseman because there's not somebody that they're in love with, like, I don't think it's ridiculous to say him and Nacho Alvarez are in a competition. I know Alvarez hasn't shown a ton offensively, but I just think he's been so piss poor offensively, Ozzie Albies has been, that it's just not going to be handed to him. Even if it's just one of those coach speak things where it's like, we're having an open competition, right? Go earn it.
Just like Koo and the Falcons are doing, where it's like, it doesn't hurt him. And like, if he is hurt by it, which he won't be, then that says a lot about him. But he won't be. Competition brings out the best in people. And if you don't rise to, that level of we're better off for it.
That's absolutely a problem. The last guy I have on this list was Tyler Kenley, who was acquired at the trade deadline. And so far, we've seen the same kind of Pierce Johnson-esque, come to Colorado or leave Colorado, go to Atlanta. You have good peripherals and you start having some success. Now, it's only been 6 appearances, but he has a 1.69 ERA. And when you look at the landscape of this bullpen and how many guys they're going to need and figure that he's a pretty cheap option, as long as he's pretty good down the stretch, I think his spot will be solidified, but I still think he's playing for one of those spots.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. That like the bullpen is so wide open. I mean, so wide open that he has a better chance than almost anyone, maybe other than Joey Wentz, I would say, in terms of the guys who are on the roster, like or outside looking in, so to speak, who has a real chance to solidify his position going into Brave spring training next year.
Yeah, I agree. So those are the 5 guys. I think those are very 5 guys. And if all those guys have really good, and those are the guys you should be paying close attention. Like that, if those 5 guys can solidify 5 roster spots, that's that many fewer holes.
You could throw Nacho into that same exact group.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Especially
and
since
like
Austin Riley doesn't look like he's going to come back for a little bit. Frankly, might not want to come back at all if that abdominal strain. They keep trying to push him, and it's like, oh, he hurt again throwing. It's like, dude, you know what? Just sit down for a couple of weeks. We don't need you right now. We got some good conversations coming up after the break. The Athletic is supposed to be a reputable source for information. We actually say it all the time on the show. We mention it. Most of their writers are absolutely fantastic, the best in the business. But every time, doesn't matter how good you are, you say something absolutely preposterous. And there was an article that suggested the Texas Longhorns are the new Alabama. The Texas Longhorns, who haven't won a big game, literally a big game, outside of a couple years ago when they beat Alabama on the road, which kind of propelled them to a spot in the Final Four for the college football playoff, where they lost to Washington as favorites. And then this past year where they lost to Georgia, not once, but twice, once on the road, once to a backup quarterback. They're the new Alabama, which is insane.
And the quote is, this comes from the Athletic, Ralph Russo. There is always another draft pick. There is always another All-American. The talent conveyor belt is fully operational and well-funded. The days of stumbling as a 12-point favorite at home appear to be over. That makes you Alabama? That you're no longer in danger of losing as a double-digit favorite? You know what? If you said that about Georgia, that makes sense. Who's put more talent in the NFL in the past few years than Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs? Who's the team where you look around and you go, All-American? The Georgia Bulldogs. I have no idea. It feels like everybody is taking crazy pills in the national media, whether they want it to be true or whatever. With Quinn Ewers, with Arch Manning, with Texas, with Steve Sarkisian. Kalen DeBoer has beaten Steve Sarkisian with lesser talent. Steve Sarkisian has out-recruited Kirby Smart one time since he got to Texas. He has not beaten Georgia. Hell, he didn't even win the SEC last year, and everybody is already acting like he's running the SEC. Georgia won the SEC last year in a down year. I have no idea where this stuff is coming from. It feels like I'm watching a completely different game or season than everybody else. I'm at a loss for words, which never happens. It's like, all right, you're playing a joke. It's from Fansided. It's from a Texas blog. It's a YouTube. It's The Athletic. This is national landscape. You got Paul Feinbaum saying that Arch Manning is going to be the most dynamic college football player, not quarterback, college football player of a generation. Guys played in 3 games. None of them were big. What are we doing?
Let's not forget also when Texas went 2 years after, which they lost embarrassing. It was an embarrassing loss to Washington. Like, let's make no mistake about it. They had so much more talent than that football team, and they got outcoached and outplayed. They also lost to Oklahoma, their biggest rival that season. So more often than not, when Texas is up against a good football team, they piss down their leg. That's the opposite of Alabama.
They probably should have lost to Arizona State.
Alabama would go out there and beat you by 50 points. You would be the number 4. And trust me, as an LSU fan, I know.
Yeah.
We would be ranked top 10 in the country. They'd come into Baton Rouge. We'd be feeling good about it. And we'd leave like they just whipped our bottoms. Like Nick Saban actually came up to me and spanked me. And I was 30 rows up. I mean, That is what Alabama was doing to teams. Every time Texas meets a ranked team, they're in a close game or they lose. And more often than not, they lose. Go look at Steve Sarkisian's numbers against ranked teams. We're talking about this as Alabama. Not to mention, there will never be another Alabama. The closest thing we'll probably ever get to Alabama is the most recent stretch of Georgia. And even then, you see them, kind of evening out to the rest of the playing field because that's what NIL has done. The bar that Nick Saban set was damn near unreachable. And if it was ever going to be reached again, it's right now by Kirby Smart. And anybody saying Texas, Steve Sarkisian, who has not won a national championship, has won one college football playoff game against Arizona State, who shouldn't even have been in there, and it took multiple over. What are we doing?
And a phantom PI penalty that probably should have cost them the game. Like, you're talking about Alabama? I mean, so that quote I just read about the All-Americans, the talent, all this stuff, where that's Georgia. And like, I could even make an argument that Ohio State is closer to being that Alabama than Texas is because of the route they have to take, which is easier, undoubtedly, than Texas. I have no idea where everyone is just overlooking everything. I don't understand. They lost to Georgia twice. In Austin, in Atlanta, leading at halftime in the SEC championship, then lost to a backup quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. What are we doing?
It's also funny because as much as there is this hype around Texas, even the odds makers out there aren't necessarily buying into this. They're at 9.5. That is what their win total is. And frankly, they got a tough game to open the season against Ohio State. Now, they could make a statement on that game. They could very easily lose it. I think that's a coin toss type of game. Obviously, they have to go on the road against Georgia. If they lose those games, they've got Florida on their schedule. They've got Oklahoma on their schedule. They've got Texas A&M at the end of the year on their schedule. They've got some games. Like, if you're cashing in that they lose to Ohio State and Georgia, it could get to a pretty sketchy spot here for Texas where we're not even talking about national championship. We're talking about, did they embarrass themselves after all this hype?
What draft picks also have they just planted in the NFL? Your 6th round pick in Quinn Ewers? Golden, that wide receiver, that was the only first round pick.
They had Banks.
That was 2 first round picks.
And then Mbuka, but like that's a 2nd round pick. You're right. It's not.
That's Ohio State.
It wasn't a Georgia of the past that we had from 7 first round picks.
Well, let's not even compare it to. They're comparing it to Bama, where 2 first round picks for Nick Saban during his prime was a bad year. That was a bad year.
Alex, I'd be honest, and obviously we don't have this in front of us. I'd be shocked if during prime Bama they ever had a year with less than 3 first round picks.
I am shocked. Dumbfounded about and we're talking about All-Americans everywhere you look. There weren't that many last year. Are we talking preseason All-American list? Because that's what these AP writers, it's like the nostalgia of like Texas with Mac Brown.
The thing is,
they want it to happen so bad, so they're writing it.
I think Texas is like a fun school to like when they're good. It's great for the game.
We can have a good conversation about it.
I mean, he's doing this for the Texas Longhorns.
I am so dumbfounded about. It's like I have to keep reminding him, no, I watched the games last year. I watched everything. I know what happened. They nearly lost to Vandy. Didn't blow out A&M either.
Yeah.
That game was to go to the SEC championship. A&M lost by a touchdown. I don't understand. I love Sarkisian. I do agree the Longhorns are great for college football. The stadium is fun. Austin is fun. I like going against those guys. But let's stop being stupid, because that's what you are writing this stuff. You're stupid.
It is moronic. It is one of the dumbest things. I mean, the Alabama thing is just so far.
It's like LSU wins in 2019. I don't know. Could we have another Bama on our hands? Like,
we actually won a national championship.
Yeah.
Like, actually went
and blew everyone out.
They didn't even go. They haven't even been to a national championship. And we're talking about this. We got more to talk about after the break. College football week 1 is around the corner, and we have a ton of huge matchups featuring SEC teams. Which one of these teams has the most pressure? Now, there's kind of 2 categories. We kind of have some some good matchups, but then we have the great ones, and we'll start with the great ones. And everyone knows those great ones because they're the featured matchup of that weekend. Texas and Ohio State, and we can start with Texas and Ohio State. We just talked about them, and it's a different kind of pressure because Texas can still easily make the playoffs. Most would probably expect them, even if they lose this game, to make the playoffs. But considering what we just talked about and all the hype on Arch Manning, no player in the country has more pressure on them than Arch Manning going into the shoe and having to perform well against a very, very good Ohio State defense.
Yeah. I think obviously it's the number one matchup because it's 1 versus 3 or whatever it is. But I think that this is kind of being overblown because in terms of pressure, they both have pressure because it's a marquee matchup, but also like both of these teams, I was about to tweet it coming up here, like both of these teams lose. It does not affect their playoff chances literally at all. Like literally at all. I mean, I know that might sound crazy. It's affecting seeding, certainly, but not that much. You still go on to win the Big Ten. If you lose to Texas, you get a bye. You lose to Ohio State, you go on to win the SEC, you still get a bye. Like, both of these teams have pressure only because they want to, be number one and have that kind of confidence that you went on the road or you defended. You didn't just beat them once, you beat them twice in a calendar year. It's like, yeah, of course that's a lot of pressure, but I mean, in terms of playoffs, the other marquee matchup is more, where LSU's playoffs are really riding and dying. I do believe that because you lose this game against Clemson. Now you're really talking about you can lose 2 more games max, and that includes against Ole Miss. That includes against Bama. That includes against A&M. Like, that is a difficult pill to swallow. But then on the other hand, Clemson is in the same boat as Texas and Ohio State, where Clemson loses that game. Well, you just lost to a good game against LSU. You can go on and win the ACC and not lose another game.
I think Clemson's in a little bit different of a boat simply because they don't have as many marquee matchups in the ACC to kind of pump up their resume. So if they do drop a game or do drop 2 games in the ACC and they're not in the championship, like they're clearly out of the playoff. But I totally agree. And then beyond that, on the LSU side of things, you have the whole narrative that Brian Kelly has been trying to stop, that he cannot not only not win big games, but just win in week 1, perform up to expectations in week 1, at least go out there and make it a game where they go out and play solidly like you expect them to play, like they do more often than not outside of week 1. Look like LSU in week 1, even if they don't lose, look like LSU.
Yeah. And going back to the Texas-Ohio State matchup, I think all of the pressure is on Texas because of all of the things we've talked about. The hype around Texas's program, period, the hype around Arch Manning individually. And then obviously the reasonable people who say, well, they haven't done anything. They haven't won anything, including, you can chalk that Michigan up win last year as super impressive. But if you were listening to our college football show, I was sitting here telling you that Michigan was going to be a bad football team and that Texas was going to go in there and absolutely obliterate them. Like, Texas has all the pressure, but it's pressure that maybe they didn't put it on themselves, but it's like manufactured pressure where it's like never in my life would I expect more of the pressure to be on the team that didn't win the national championship last year.
And going on the road to beat the national champ. Like they shouldn't be expected to win this game. And 100%. They're going in there the number 1 team in the country. And everybody, if they don't win this game and Arch Manning doesn't perform like Superman, everyone's going to be disappointed, even if it's a good, close game. Like it probably will be, and it's probably going to be pretty ugly. It's probably not going to be this high-flying show where it's the Arch Manning show. It's probably going to be more of a defensive showdown, a little bit ugly. And if they lose a game like that, everyone's going to be like, well, what were we thinking about Texas? We're going to talk about some of the other teams because there are some big games, and they also have bigger implications in terms of playoffs because there are teams that need to start off with statement wins. So outside of the top 10 matchups that we get in week 1 involving SEC teams, there are several big ones, and these might even have bigger pressure because there's jobs on the line and things of whatnot. Auburn and Baylor. I mean, Baylor is a team that we talked about yesterday, and I was like, Baylor could easily end the season ranked. Like, that's a very good football team, and I might even make the argument that they're a better football team than Auburn, but nobody in Auburn wants to hear that, especially in the third year of Hugh Freeze. So he's got to go out there.
And it's on the road.
Yeah, he's got to go out there and get a win, in my opinion.
I'm at least looking at it that it's not at Jordan-Hare. I don't know exactly where it might be one of those neutral sites, but, I mean, Baylor's the home game at this point, and I mean, that's a that's a difficult place to play because while Dave Aranda has left a little bit to be desired, it's not like this guy forgot how to coach defenses. So like Hugh Freeze, and good Lord, I'm blanking on his name again. I loved him last year for Oklahoma, the quarterback transfer. Jackson Arnold. That's a lot of pressure to have. And Auburn is like win right now or else. And another one that's kind of similar is South Carolina hosting Virginia Tech. Now, obviously, I don't really know what to expect with Virginia Tech, but I would say South Carolina has a lot of hype around them, more hype than they've had in quite a long time. And if you go out and lose that opener, and no disrespect to Virginia Tech, like Virginia Tech could end up being a really good team. Could be one of those matchups you look up at the end of the year and was like, all right, that South Carolina, that loss to Virginia Tech wasn't as bad. But now the conversation surrounding the Gamecocks is no longer, all right, we need to get back. You need to get to the playoffs now.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be a decade since the Gamecocks were ranked this high, back to the Jadeveon Clowney and Steve Spurrier days. I would imagine that they've been ranked this high going into the season, whether it's warranted or whether it's not, and they're going to get a test right there. And they're going to have to perform well enough in the SEC, and they have a very, very tough schedule. They're going to lose some games. They're not good enough to not
they have
lose
a
some
really
games.
tough, and all those games that they had at home, like LSU, they got to go on the road to LSU. They got to go on the road to Alabama this year.
No, Alabama's at home, but
okay.
they do. I mean, they've got a tough schedule. I mean, they play A&M,
either way.
They play A&M. They play Ole Miss. They have an extremely, extremely difficult schedule that if they drop one early, their playoff hopes you can basically.
And they started last year really slow.
They almost lost to, I forget who they played, but it was a terrible team, and they won on the last second.
Yep.
So, yeah, they've got a lot to think. And then you go to the Alabama, Florida State, two marquee programs, obviously on the opposite ends of the spectrum based on their performance last year. We'll see what Florida State, if they can bounce back. I know we both have our reserves about Mike Norvell, but here's the thing, and this is why I think there's pressure on Kalen DeBoer. Obviously, there's pressure just being the head coach of Alabama, but Kalen DeBoer has done one thing really, really well in his career. He's dominant in big games. I mean, the way his teams perform, whether it was Washington being 10-point underdogs against Oregon multiple times and winning both of those games, whether it's at Alabama, the way he performed against Georgia, the way that he performed against those teams looked like the best teams ever. But he has dropped the ball against lesser teams. And this is obviously one of those lesser teams where you're going to be walking into a madhouse in Florida State, just dying for anything to hang on to. And so if you let them in this game, if you let them hang around until the third or fourth quarter, that place is going to be going crazy. You got a first year starting quarterback. It could get a little freaky in there.
I think there's absolutely pressure on Kalen DeBoer and Bama, not only to win, but also to win convincingly. I mean, you're double-digit favorites. Everybody's expecting you to go into Florida State and completely blow them out of the water. Tommy Castellanos is acting like he's Baker Mayfield, even though he hasn't done a damn thing. I have no idea what kind of confidence he's, I aspire to be that confident with such little that I've proven. But, there's a lot of pressure on him because, again, it's not just win this game. It is win it and win it convincingly to not only get your fans behind you, maybe even some of the players in Bama where it's like, golly, we lost to Oklahoma. Golly, we lost to Vandy a week after the biggest win in recent memory. And then we go and do that against Michigan. I mean, absolutely piss your pants against Michigan.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Then you got the Battle of Orange, right? Syracuse and Tennessee. Different breeds of orange, but this one's super interesting. I mean, Syracuse was a surprise team, ended the year ranked in the top 25, had a big upset win in the final week against Miami, which knocked Miami out of the playoffs. Fran Brown's done some great things there. I know Kyle McCord's not there, but that's a team that's going to be well coached and prepared for a week one matchup. And then if you're Tennessee, obviously you were the story of the entire offseason. Everything was about Nico, and it was frankly a black stain on a program that Heupel's really built back up.
Got to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he's built this program into a respectable team, which Tennessee hadn't been for several decades. And all that people are talking about is the quarterback that, spurned you and left you at the altar for over $500,000 or whatever it is. Can you put that behind you and go play a well-coached football game and win and start talking about the playoffs again in Tennessee.
Yeah, and Fran Brown's got that kind of style of coaching where it's kind of like Brent Key and Kirby Smart, where it's hard-nosed. The players feed into that, and they might be out-talented if you're looking at a recruiting star sheet compared to Tennessee. But this is not going to be a game in which Syracuse feels like they're underdogs or they feel like they don't belong on the same field as Tennessee. And I think you nailed it, that Tennessee has got to put that a statement win against a team like Syracuse that is more respectable than maybe some casual fans would even know, is the exact kind of stuff that can solidify, close that door of the Nico time where it's like, we are done, we are past that. And Heupel isn't a guy that's just, he's beaten Bama a couple times, but cannot even come close to beating Georgia.
Alex, rapid fire. Which one of those SEC teams in week 1 is falling?
I think it's better case, or I think it's more likely like most of them fall than they don't. I think LSU would be the easy pick, but I'm going to go. I think LSU might lose. I think Texas is going to lose, but I'm like most certain about Auburn losing.
Yep, I agree. All 3 of those teams are on the hot seat, and watch out for South Carolina as well. That wraps our show. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be back with you on Monday.